Greetings. We're set to have a conversation with the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Julius Ogamba, on a raft of issues touching on his docket. We're having this conversation at a time when schools have reopened for the third term, and there are concerns around delays in dispensation of capitation funds. And not just that, we'll definitely go into matters to do with examinations and assessment, bearing in mind in this particular third term, we're set to have a couple of examinations, especially for the young learners. And we'll equally touch on matters to do with higher education. Buenos Dias, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for according us this interview.
And thank you, Jesse, for making time to come. I'm happy to be here and to be able to respond to the issues that are of concern to Kenyans in the education sector, so that we can bring them up to speed in order for them to know where we are, where we've come from, and where we are going in the sector. And to just state that we are available to receive any feedback from members of the public in the areas that they are concerned about, and that as a ministry and as a government, we are available to respond to the challenges that are facing the sector and get solutions for them in order to keep our learners in school. So I'm happy to be here. I'm ready to respond to any of the issues that you might have and give the Kenyan public the comfort that the government is in the seat to ensure that our learners progress.
Okay, it's quite important to know that the government is on top of things, because the education sector is one of those key sectors that we definitely have to highlight time and time again. And that's why we're having this conversation. Perhaps let's start with the latest update we can get from this school disbursement. And we have had time and time again of delays, not just in this third term, but the previous terms as well. As we speak right now, what's the status of the disbursement of this capitation funds? Talk to us about the delays that have been echoed, especially in the media.
Thank you, Jesse. On the issue of capitation, as Kenyans may well know, the education sector gets the bulk of the budget. This financial year, 25-26, the allocation to the education sector of the budget is at 28%. That is 702 billion, 702.7 billion that is coming to the sector in all the institutions from basic all the way to the universities. The capitation rate to the students stands at 1,420 for primary schools, 15,040 for senior school, for junior school, and 22,244 for senior schools. Now, this capitation is normally disbursed in 3 tranches. First term, it's done 50%. Second term is done 30%. And third term is done 20%. We are currently in the third term. And the disbursements we receive, we do apply to Treasury 2-3 weeks before schools open. And Treasury therefore processes the amount that is due for that particular term. It is released to us. Once it is released to the ministry releases these funds to the institutions within 3 working days. Now, what has happened in this third term that has led to the delays is the fact that the Auditor General did undertake a special audit of these funds in various schools and gave an indication that in the last 4 years, disbursements that may have been made to schools perhaps that do not exist, or to numbers that are not correct. So we decided for this third term that before we release the funds to the institutions, we undertake a verification exercise in order to determine the existence of the schools and the correct number of the students that are there in these schools. We are correlating this information between what we already had in our system in KEMIS, what the heads of institutions are sending to us currently, and those are also verified by our sub-county directors and county directors to confirm the correct numbers. And so we are cross-checking these numbers in order to ensure that the numbers we are getting are the correct ones. This exercise and the tool we developed started last Friday and is going on, and we'll be able to complete the exercise by the end of tomorrow. So what is happening is that from last Friday, once the verification is done, funds are released to those schools where we've cross-checked and confirmed the numbers. So disbursements have been being done every day since Friday last week. The ones that have not received means that the verification for those numbers from the institutions has not been completed. And that is the exercise that is going on. We have a team right now sitting at Machakos doing that work as we speak. So we have a program of finishing it by the next day, that's tomorrow, Friday. Once it is done, the full disbursement will be done, and so we are sure that the capitation will be in the institution's accounts by latest next week. But for this week, we're completing the verification exercise, which was critical because we have had these issues going on for a long, long time. But nobody had done an exercise to confirm, are these numbers correct? Because what was happening, we had a system called KEMIS, the figures would be put in there, but there's no stratification, clarification of who these are. For example, now what we are doing is we are asking, if you say you have 1,000 students in school, they're in which grade? Yeah? How many are in grade 1? How many are in grade 2? How many are in grade 3? Then male, female, how many are female, how many are male, so that we can counter-check with the numbers that we've been receiving before so that we get the correct number. And where we are not sure, we go back and confirm, counter-check and confirm this number so that we can disburse resources to the right number of students and to the right schools. And that's the exercise that has caused this delay for this time. But we thought it is better we delay even for a week, but we get the numbers right, because going forward, it will then help us. Similarly, because we've been having a system called NEMIS, which has had a few challenges, and that's where we are moving to the new system called KEMIS, Kenya Education Information Management System. We thought we start with this verification, and as we continue to transition to KEMIS, the numbers that we'll be feeding into KEMIS would be the correct number. So that is why there's been a bit of delay. I'm urging the heads of institutions just to bear with us, because we are all willing and we are all saying we must get the right data in order for us to be able to make the right decisions. That is the cause of the delay. But the funds have already been released from Treasury. They are with the ministry. The ministry is releasing as they confirm the correct numbers, as they confirm the schools.
Okay, it's proper to have a verification process, especially after the reports of ghost schools and learning money being lost. Let's just talk about this capitation issue, because going forward, it would be proper to give an assurance to the stakeholders involved that the ministry is planning to ensure consistent and timeliness disbursement of funds moving forward. So what exactly are you doing to ensure that gone are the days where schools open without the disbursement of capitation money, which is quite crucial for their operations on a day-to-day basis?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. In fact, as we speak, there are two main things that we are doing. You will notice that the system that we've been using, of 50% first term, 30% second term, and 20% third term. Our academic year is between January and December. Our financial year is between June and July. So there is a little disconnect in that space to determine when we are saying we are doing 30%, for example, in term 2 or 20% in term 3, are we aligning the financial year to the academic year? So one of the conversations that we are having with Treasury is to see how to align our academic year with the financial year for purposes of disbursements, so that these delays then do not occur. But the second and critical point that we are doing to ensure that going forward, we don't have delays in disbursements of capitation to schools, is that we've had a meeting with Treasury and we've discussed and said, look, we have agreed on 50-30-20, but perhaps when we ask for 50% in January, Treasury is under pressure in January for payment of other requirements like external debt. Is it possible for us to work with Treasury, and we are doing that, an analysis is being done, that between January and December, which is the months, which are the areas in Treasury the financial year, the Treasury is not under pressure, that it has got that much more money, so that we can be able to say that's the time the money can be released to us. In other words, we can then have either the funds released once or twice when there is no pressure for the funds in Treasury, so that it comes to the schools, so that we avoid the situation where at the time when we want to get the 50%, Treasury is under pressure to pay many other things and the resources are not available. So we are working towards coming up with a system, and this will be factored in the KEMIS digital platform that we are working on, so that we know that at this point when we have more money collected in Treasury, we should then get more into the school, so that the issues of delays then do not come about. So we are thinking about how do we resolve that issue, because the delays in capitation come about because of lack of available resources at the point it is required. But if we work in a way that we know, at, say, the month of April, for instance, we find maybe Treasury has more money that time because it's not paying out many other disbursements. That would be the right time to say, now the larger amount, big chunk of what is required for schools should be released at that point. So we are working with them, and teams are already in place to navigate that space, to ensure that we are actually looking towards ensuring that this issue of delays becomes an issue of the past.
Is there a time frame on those negotiations?
We started last Tuesday when we had a meeting with them, and we said these are some of the things that we need to address. We also addressed the question of the numbers, so that and that's why we're doing the verification, so that when we complete, when we come and say we have, for example, 12 million students, we have 3 million, say, in senior school, we do the 3 million times the 22,244, and that money is then allocated. So once we have the right numbers of ourselves and verified, then it would be easier for Treasury to plan for those. So there is we're supposed to do it within the next 2-3 months.
Okay, that's proper to know. Let's pin on that verification process that's ongoing, because it'll get to answer a lot of unsettling questions around capitation going to ghost schools, quote unquote. Talk to us about the process or transition from NEMIS to KEMIS. How far are we in terms of that particular transition? And is this the much needed solution to schools receiving full capitation?
It is part of the solution, because part of the solution just is we need to get the right data. We need to have the right numbers first of the learners, and secondly of even the institutions. Yeah. And we need to link these numbers with the institutions, and we'll be linking them with other government agencies, so that we are able to tell that when you say, for example, you have 300 students, we should be able to link that maybe to immigration, to other organizations, to find out, is this really the right number? So that linkage will help us remove the cobwebs around that space. So yes, the KEMIS is part of the solution to the challenges that we've been having of not having the right numbers. Okay. And because we've not been able to have those right numbers, then it becomes a bit difficult for Treasury and members, the parliamentary teams, to say this is the right amount that is being asked for. But once we confirm that this is the actual number, then there would be no reason for somebody to say we can't give you the figures at the rate that is in the policy. So this is some of the things that we are doing to ensure that we remove those unclear statistics. We have clear statistics, so we protect the correct number of people that we are dealing with and the learners.
Okay, that's good. There seems to be progress in terms of verification to track genuine schools and learners. But I have to ask this question, because that's a burning question. How did this go on for so long under the Ministry of Education's watch, that we had some ghost schools receiving capitation funds? Is an audit ongoing?
The audit that came out, the special audit that came out, suggested that the information that we have is for the last 4 years. So because of it, we said, let's do the verification. And once that is done, we'll then compare with what has come out in the audit and what we've come up with. And where we discover that there were ghost schools, we will proceed to hand over to the investigative agencies to deal with that issue, because that is fraud, that is theft, that's criminal. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, we do not send money to schools. We actually send money to bank accounts belonging to those schools. And I've said those bank accounts are normally run by humans, faces. So to start with, where we discover, for example, the school X that did not exist on the ground, but exists as a bank account, because it has to have a document that was used to open that account in the bank. There has to be a human being who goes to the bank to sign the check and all that. Signatories. It will be very then easy for the investigative agencies to start from there, because we would then give them the list and say, we had school X, we sent money to school X to KCB Bank in, some town. So they will go there and start from there. They'll start from that. It becomes very, very easy. Who is running the institution? So we'll be able to catch this up, and we'll find out when was it opened, what was going on in that space.
For the sake of accountability,
yes.
When will we see some action? Because the audit has been done, money has exchanged hands.
When we complete this exercise of verification, and there's a team as well that is looking at that audit report and comparing with what we have, so that we then have a document that we can hand over to the investigative agencies to go and deal with, because we don't have that capacity to. We can only correlate and reconcile and say this is not appearing right. Then the investigation can take place. So that is why we said, let's take 2-3 weeks, do the verification, and it will be a starting point for whatever it is that can be picked from. It will be like a foundational base for them to start the investigations. Once they discover, then the law will take its course. But we have started to do something about it. And that's why we are doing that verification exercise.
Interesting. Still on the numbers, and I know this is an ongoing process, do we have a semblance of the number of learners in primary, junior, and secondary schools? You mentioned it's being concluded tomorrow.
Yes, we will conclude tomorrow. But the numbers that we've been working with are almost at around 12.5 million in total. I'll not be able to give you the specific clusters, but we have a general population of about 12.5 or so. But this exercise will give us an indication about where we stand. But the exercise is also doing more. It's doing more in the sense that we are now being able to find out, for instance, school X may be having 5 students, maybe 5 students in junior school. So this information will now help us make a determination as to whether we should close some schools or we should combine them, depending on the distances from where they are, so that we are able to make rational decisions based on that data. So this is an important exercise for us that will help us going forward to make informed policy decisions that actually are relevant and impactful in the ground. So it's not just the verification of the numbers for the sake of it. It is verification for us to be able to determine how do we progress going forward. What should we change? What should we improve? So that we have that much better system going forward. Because as you are aware, we are in the process of doing the reforms in the education sector that started with the setting up of the Presidential Working Party. And in this process, we have now the opportunity to interrogate each and everything that we've been doing and find out what should we keep, what should we discard, what should we amend, what should we panel beat, so that we can have a cleaner system going forward.
Since you brought up the Presidential Working Party on education reforms, talk to us about the work in progress, because some work has been done in terms of implementing the report and what it had recommended, but some issues like minimum essential package still remains unfulfilled. What's the plan briefly?
Briefly, what we are doing is we have implemented quite a number of the recommendations that were made by the Presidential Working Party. Some of the issues that are remaining to be implemented require that the law, for example, is amended to fit and to reconcile, and that is what is going on. We've done bills. We have 13 bills that we've already done, and they're in the process of undergoing, verifications, and they are the process of undergoing some signatures from the various stakeholders before we take them to cabinet for cabinet approval, and then we take them to parliament for implementation. But in terms of issues like the one you raise of minimum package. We are looking into it and to find out what do we require, because there's a financial implication to it. Does it need to be anchored in policy, etc.? So those are some of the things we are looking at. We are looking at issues relating to, for instance, amalgamation of the scholarships, for example, in that space where we have too many bursaries, too many scholarships by various agencies that are not collected, that perhaps it is time for us to have that conversation to see, should we convert and centralize them in one pot so that then we can be able to utilize them to reach that much higher number, because there's duplicity. You could find, for example, a student gets a bursary from the county, gets the same bursary from maybe the CDF, gets bursary from other well-wishers or institutions, and then other students miss because maybe they do not have the know-how of how to go about it to get. So we are thinking, do we now amalgamate everything into one pot so that a centralized system in order for... So these are conversations that things that we are working and thinking towards to ensure that going forward, education becomes affordable or becomes free, depending on what it is that we come up with at the end of the day. So these are some of the conversations that are taking place, arising out of what the recommendations of the Presidential Working Party said.
Okay, that's proper to note. Let's talk about the third term, which is quite weighty in the academic calendar. A couple of examinations are expected, including the first of its kind, that's the KJSEA, the Kenya Junior Secondary Education Assessment. Will there be guidelines that will be released by the Ministry of Education ahead of this assessment, like what happened with KEPSEA previously? And equally, talk to us about the preparations around the examinations that will be falling in the next 3 months or so.
Yes, the grade 9 students will be undertaking their first, it is the first one, under the new CBE program. Yes. That will take place. What is unique about this particular exam is this. They've already acquired 40% of the 100% that they require to move to grade 10. In other words, the KEPSEA contributes 20%, grade 6 and 7 contributes 20%, and now grade 9 will be 60%. So already what they've done, what they've been learning in primary and grade 6, grade 7 and 8 has an impact, as a value. Previously, in the 844 system, whatever it is that you are done in class had no value towards your exam. Yeah. You waited to do the exam at the end of the period, which is a 3-4 days exam, and that determined on whether you got the marks or you didn't. So what's unique with grade 9 exam is that already you are starting with 40%. Then the assessment that will be the exam in October and November accounts for 60%. Now, the guidelines have already been issued. The teachers have already been retooled and trained. They've been undergoing training for the last several months. In fact, I think even last week, somewhere in Machakos, before the schools opened, undergoing that training on what it is, the guidelines that they'll need to give to the students as they are going to do their exams. The students themselves have been taken through from April last year on what they need to do in order to be able to attempt to do the exams. Yeah. Piloting has been done, during that period in order for them to see what it is that they expect when they are going to do the exam. The students themselves from July have actually been able to select their sort of pathways and also select the schools that they're going to go to. And that's why I think a few weeks ago we did indicate that from the analysis that was done, which was surprising to very many people, 5,000 of the secondary schools did not get a single applicant of the students wanting to go into those institutions, which again is going to assist us once we have this verification exercise to tell us why that was the case, and it will help us, it will inform us on whether we should be continuing with some of those institutions. So basically, the preparations have been put in place. Okay. The circulars have been issued to inform each and everyone what they're expected. The dates of the exams have been set. They have been already issued. So we are quite prepared to undertake those exams in order for the students to transition to grade 10. Of course, the KCSE remains the same. It's the same process, and the preparations are also advanced and will be proceeding to undertake those exams. The Kenya National Examinations Council is prepared to undertake all those exams. The only issue that was there before was an issue of budget, where it was indicated that we might not have the money to do the exams and the parents were going to pay. But that issue was resolved, and 6 billion has already been released towards the preparation and the processing of the exams, with any other amount that will be required to come from the next supplementary, 1 or 2.
So parents will not be forced to pay.
Parents will not pay for anything.
All right.
Yeah, the same thing remains the way it was, and that has already been taken care of.
You've raised that issue about 5,000 schools not picked for senior school by some of these learners. In terms of placement, how exactly will you wiggle your way around this? Will learners be forced to go to those schools they didn't want to go to, the schools that they didn't pick, the 5,000 of them? How will you balance?
No, they'll not be forced. You see, the competency-based education has 3 pathways. The STEM pathway, social sciences pathway, and the creative arts and sports pathway. What we are doing with the CBE is student-centered. All the decisions that we are making sure that we are ensuring that the student, the learner, does the very best where they are best. So we cannot then start forcing them to go to institutions that, for example, do not have the pathways that they require. Not all the schools will be offering the same, all the pathways. So you can't, for example, tell a student who wants to do arts and sports to go to a school that is not offering arts and sports. So because of, we've changed the whole thinking of how education is done so that the students now come up front. It is them who take center stage. And then we are ensuring that we provide the facilities that are required for them to be able to learn and for them to pursue what they have chosen. For instance, when an analysis was done in senior schools, we found that we require 1,600 laboratories, so to the institutions that did not have, so that there is the opportunity for that school to undertake the STEM science. So those 1,600 labs are going to be constructed and equipped before December this year, so that come January, when the students are coming through, they are already there. The resources have already been provided. The process of procurement will be done. Is just being held because of the e-procurement that's supposed to take place, and we are almost, I'm told, coming through, so that we can then ensure that these particular laboratories are built. That process will start maybe mid this month or early next month, and we'll complete them within the next 2 months before December.
Okay.
I'm saying this because we've done it before. When we were moving from grade 8 to grade 9, an assessment was done. We needed 16,000 classrooms, which we started construction in October 2024, and by February we had completed them, all those classrooms. And we even went beyond the 23 because we partnered with the National Constituency Development Fund, and we did another 7,000. So we have a total of 23,000 classrooms that were done for grade 9. And remember, because we didn't have Form 1s this year, and we have another class that is exiting in Form 4, that means there's sufficient space in the senior schools for the students to transition from grade 9 to grade 10. So at least we do not have that challenge of infrastructure or space in the senior schools as we speak.
Well, it seems the infrastructure box is ticked in terms of preparation for the transition to grade 10. Talk to us about some of the concerns that are rising around the retooling of teachers. Because I was having a conversation with a stakeholder in the education sector, and they raised a concern that some of these teachers are specialized on different subjects and not necessarily, let's pick an example of metalwork or indigenous languages. Now, if retooling happens on a subject that they were never trained on, what are we solving? You know, it seems to be we're just picking a teacher who didn't perhaps train on metalwork and retooling in order to make sure they teach metalwork, and perhaps their training might be wanting. So highlight some of these concerns that are coming out of here. Even as we hire so many teachers, over 50,000 teachers, at the end of the day, are they qualified to teach in some of these areas like media technology, marine technology, you name it?
So let me start first by saying that the issue of teachers has been a concern in the country. When this administration came into office, there was a very large number of teacher shortage in the country across the board. And so the government embarked on employing teachers. In fact, in the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza, there was a promise to employ 116,000 teachers. So far, we've employed 76,000 teachers. More than 60,000 of those teachers are teachers who've been employed and who are going to be dealing with junior school, for example, and therefore that shortage that was anticipated in that space has been addressed. Secondly, we are now in the process of employing another 24,000 to reach 100,000 by December this year. Now, these teachers that are being employed, they are not just being employed out of the blue. They are being employed from the statistics that we have, showing that we need at least 60% of those teachers to be STEM teachers. And so there is a tilt towards ensuring that the ones that are being employed will meet that criteria, and the 60% of them will be doing STEM. The retooling is designed to ensure that the teachers who are already in place in the institutions of learning are brought up to speed on the little changes that have happened in the for example, if you take maths and there's a math teacher, maths is maths. So the retooling for that particular teacher to meet the issues relating to CBE or the competency-based education is not that much. And I've had chats, I've had discussions with teachers, just like you've had discussions with the stakeholders. And what they've told me, once a teacher, always a teacher. And the example they normally give me is in 2019 when, for example, we had COVID. We really never took the doctors back to class to teach them on how to treat COVID, although COVID was a completely new disease. There is a way that the basics, the fundamentals remain, and you're just, it's like continuous learning. You learn the new thing, and therefore you are more ready to offer that that is required for that particular subject. So what I'm simply saying is that the government currently has given another 980 million to retool these teachers so that they are ready to take our learners on in the subjects that are there, because the subjects are the same. History is still the same. If it's art, the basics are the same. So we are not taking, for example, a history teacher and retooling him in chemistry. We are retooling them in the area that they're specialized in.
Okay, that's proper to clarify. Allow us to take a short break. The bills have to be paid, as they say. When we come back, we'll continue with this conversation, even as we touch on the basic areas. We'll finalize on that as we transition to higher education learning. Stay with us. Welcome back and thank you for staying with KTN. We continue with our deliberations, one-on-one conversation with the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Julius Ogamba, on a raft of issues emanating in the education sector. Thank you so much for your patience. And right before the break, you were breaking down some of the steps taken in terms of retooling of teachers to meet the demands as we continue with this transition in the competency-based education. A couple of concerns, and perhaps we can just go through them really quickly. On the retooling of teachers, there are new subjects that are coming up in senior school. And I gave examples right before, marine technology and whatnot. Are there teachers already teaching this subjects who have been trained in these subjects, or we are retooling? And that's why I asked a little bit earlier, are we moving from a physics teacher, hey, you can do marine biology as well? Yes.
In the last 3-4 years, and since the competency-based education program started, we've admitted teachers into the teacher training colleges who have undertaken some of these subjects.
Okay.
Some of them just graduated. In fact, I think in July, I was in Cabaret Teachers Training College, and we graduated about 271 or 2,200 and number. I was in Tambaj.
Yeah.
We also graduated some. There are those ones now that are graduating currently who are competency-based education and training trained. So those are now the ones that in this 24,000 category that we are dealing with would get the jobs so that they can be able to cover whatever gaps that they are. And remember, the numbers for some of those very highly specialized subjects are not that high.
Okay.
And they may not be offered everywhere. So we would do everything possible to ensure that whatever the student needs to do, we have a teacher to be able to deal with that aspect. So we are alive to it, and we are doing something about it. We have people graduating. They have graduated last year, this year, and the year before. And some of them are already in the 76,000 category that had already been employed. So those, but as I said, we will look at the data that is available and provide the kind of resources that are required in terms of human resources, capital resource, to ensure that the learners undertake their particular areas that they have chosen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we finalize on basic education, there are these concerns around the free primary and free day secondary education in terms of parents being charged additional levies. We've had reports on that, parents complaining themselves. Some of these school administrators are saying their hands are tied, perhaps due to delays in capitation disbursement and whatnot. The ministry has termed this action illegal, but we've seen very little action taken in terms of those institutions who are charging parents additional levies. Why is this?
As we've continuously said, additional levies are not allowed, the illegal levies. But there are certain things that parents and institutions agree to do. For example, in free day secondary schools, we don't, as a ministry, we don't provide school meals for those institutions. So sometimes parents and those institutions agree that instead of the students going home, they'll be having lunch. That lunch is not paid for from the capitation. It's paid for by an arrangement between the parents and the school.
Okay.
Perhaps some of the gray areas are in such areas where, for example, now when you pursue, you'll be told, no, this is an agreement between the parent and us to pay for the meal, because it's not part of the capitation that we give. But where we find that a head teacher, a principal has levied an illegal levy and the parents have come front to say this is done, action is normally taken administratively and otherwise. So between TSC, who are the team that deals with that component, they would normally take action against those teachers. That's why In many instances, maybe because it doesn't reach the media, you would find that there are disciplinary hearings that are being done by TSC in various institutions, various regions. So action is normally taken, may not have been highlighted as such, but where we find that a teacher or a head teacher has levied figures that are not part and parcel of what the government approves, they'll face those disciplinary proceedings.
Okay, that's noted. Let's talk matters higher education right now, where there are emerging issues, and perhaps you can canvass most, if not all, of them. Perhaps let's start with an update. I'm sure HELB has been disbursed. We had those reports that HELB has released the money for the university and TVET students. That's good to note. But talk to us about some of the funding challenges we've seen emanate time and time again, because the university's fee has been reduced just recently, especially for the government-sponsored students. That's a step in the right direction, but the ministry has not yet published the full cost of programs. And I'm echoing the concerns of some of the students who have been placed in public institutions but are self-sponsored, and they don't have clarity on exactly how much they're supposed to pay, because perhaps that list that was released focused mostly on government-sponsored students and how much has been catered for by the government and how much they're supposed to pay. Talk to us.
So on matters high education, we had a problem in the universities because the government was using a system called DUC, differentiated unit cost. Over time, the government was not able to pay the full DUC that they had promised to pay to those students. So for the last very many years, it kept reducing. They were supposed to pay at a rate of 80%. It kept reducing because of lack of resources, up to maybe 38%. What then that did is to create debts in the universities, leading to almost 23 universities at the time becoming technically insolvent. That is what informed the Presidential Working Party to look at the model of funding of universities and to change it to the student-centered model that was introduced in 2023. The basis of the 2023 model was that the principle behind it is that the students who do not have capacity to pay are supported by government 90%. The students who come from families that are able to pay, they pay fairly what their capacity allows. In other words, the DUC was across the board. The child of the poorest person was getting the same amount as a child of the richest person. We said, let's change that and allow the richer person or the person with capacity to pay for their children, and the ones that do not have capacity to be supported more by government because the resources were not enough. That is the basis of the student-centered funding model in the university. And that principle remains to date, that we will do an assessment and find out what are you capable to pay. And we had many ways of finding out your capacity. For example, if your child was in an academy and you are paying 300,000 a term, we stated that because you are paying 300,000 a term and the university school fees is 119,000 a semester, you can be able to afford that amount.
If it was a scholarship.
If it was a scholarship. So we turned it around and said, let people pay their fair share so that we can support the people who need to be supported. That is how that model came about. When it started, there were bans, and those bans created a bit of a challenge because sometimes the information fed into the system was not the correct information, so it placed students in the wrong band. And there was a 15% error rate, which is high. So last year in September, our president formed a task force to relook into the MTI, the means testing instrument, and also relook at the cost of programs. Because those are the two components that create a situation where maybe the students would be paying figures that they shouldn't pay. So in the component of the MTI, the variables were increased so that it was not just maybe the school that the person went to. We could also check how much money somebody has spent in medical. We would check in NTCA to find out how many vehicles are registered in your name. We'll check in KRA to see how much money that you've been paying in taxes so that we can find out where you are. We could even check with the Ministry of Labor to see whether you are receiving that government support. That means you are completely not able to pay that much. So then we individualized the MTI to individuals. It's now an individual analysis as to what is Jesse capable of paying, so that we bring you as close as possible to what you're actually paying to reduce the margin of error. Number two, we looked at the cost of programs. And what we discovered is that the cost of programs in the country were set up on an ideal basis. For example, one of the criteria that you use in determining what is the cost of a program is the teacher-student ratio. So initially, we're using the normal standard ratio of 1 to 45. But if you have been to the University of Nairobi and you've been admitted to degree in arts, you know the students are probably 800. So the ratio of 1 to 45 would give a wrong figure. Yeah. So we rationalized that space, and we discovered that it is possible to reduce the cost by between 15 and 40%, depending on the course. Okay. And that analysis was done. So the two combined made it possible this year to allow students to be able to pay between 5,000 shillings on the cheapest cost and on the lowest end, and 75,000. The statistics that we have now show 60% of the students that we are admitting into first year are paying an average of about 28,000. Meaning we made the education now in university that much more affordable. That means many more parents are actually able to pay their portion. Yeah, so the failure rate is low and the retention rate is going to be high. As of 11:50 this morning, we have admitted 151,000 students, 151,950 or thereabout students to the universities, out of the ones that have been placed of 183,000. So we have about 32,000 to go. But we also have some universities that have not opened, and they'll be opening within the next 2 weeks or so. Okay. Now, the information we are getting, just which is very interesting, is that about 85% of parents have fully paid their fees, and a good number of part paid the fees. What is also interesting is because of the household component, the upkeep that we give to the students from HELP, let's say the student who get the highest from the poorest backgrounds get 60,000. Now, it means that if you are supposed to be in that lower end of the degree and you are paying 5,800, from your household which we've sent you, you are actually able to remove 5,000 and pay your fees. So what this will do is that much more money then comes into the universities, and the sustainability issue is going to be addressed. And the error rate has completely reduced. In fact, the parents are now saying, I'm able to pay for my two children because one is paying 11,000, another one is paying 22,000, because now it is affordable. What now that we need to address is the previous debt that the universities incurred. That is almost 120 billion. How do we deal with it? That is what, as a ministry, now we are working on to find out what are the options that we have to sort out that funding crisis in that sector. And we are working with the universities, we are working with the VCs, and they have made some recommendations on perhaps what needs to be done. So we are looking at that whole spectrum to find out we have resolved the issue of the funding model. The students are now happy in school. Some were here in the morning and they told me that issue is resolved. Now they have money in their portals. And by the way, the help was releasing the money as the universities were opening. So there's a time when you had students saying, I've checked my portal and I've not seen the money. But I said, but you are opening in October. So we were not to give you your household money before you open the universities. Yeah. Now, the policy in this country is this. Every student who is admitted to university, whether self-sponsored or even private universities, you are entitled to help loan. You can apply to get help loan. What you would not get is the scholarship.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, is the scholarship portion.
Yes.
So I encourage them to apply, and then they would be able to get that scholarship. In fact, once we resolve these issues relating to funding, I have also received requisitions from students who are even studying abroad and saying, sometimes we come, we pay for two years, the third year maybe something happens and we are not able to pay. Can government think about expanding help money to us because it's a loan? We're also dealing with the teachers, training colleges. The KMTCs are also coming in so that every student can access a government loan, depending now on how we work towards ensuring that we have enough money in that space. Just that the government has done a lot in that higher education sector. In 2022-2023, only 45 billion was allocated to that sector for help and for UF. This year, it is 85 billion, which is almost double. So we have doubled in basically 2 years. Mm-hmm. So we are doing everything that we can to ensure that no student who has qualified to go to university loses that university because of financial constraint. That is the principle, that's the basis of the whole thing. And I've assured Kenyans that we will not leave any student behind. And we've said the portal is open for applications. In fact, I did request and directed that the application portal be extended, remain open until 14th of this month, so that we do not have any student who wishes to apply not to be able to apply. Number two, help opened desks, put desks in the universities that are opening with officers, so that if a student comes and has never applied for loan and they needed to do, those officers would help them to apply there and then in those institutions, and we have had a good number doing the application. Okay. We also have in the portal an appeal portal, so that if you think what you're supposed to pay is not the correct figure, you go in there and do your appeal, and I'll be giving this maybe at the end of this month after all the universities have opened. But so far, so good. The payments, the reports that we are receiving, and we are receiving reports every day about the admissions, about the payments, about the challenges. And there are universities that have done clips of what the parents are saying, what the students are saying. And I urge you guys, please, to air some of those clips, not just the...
Okay, I get you. It's our sole duty to do that.
Yeah, to do that, so that people can get to know that there has been that shift.
Okay. Yes. Allow me to double down on the question I asked previously. The full cost of these programs, has a list been released by the Ministry of Education?
You see, the full cost of programs is different, so to speak, from university to university, because there are older universities. There is an analysis that was done. That's why we said some costs were 15% reduced and some are 40%. What, as a ministry, we are really concerned with is the capacity of the students and the parents to be able to pay their household portion, because the rest is paid for by the government, either as a loan or as a scholarship. So once we are able to resolve this issue of household portion being met, the burden that is being met by the parents being sorted out. The rest we think is just an administrative issue and that can be accessed.
So for those who don't rely on government scholarship,
yes,
how do they know how much this cost, this program will
cost? It is in their letters.
It's in their letters.
And it is in their
portal. It's under the university.
It's under the university. You go to the individual university, go to the portal, in your course, it will show you this is the amount that this course costs, and this is what you are supposed to pay in semester 1, this is what you're supposed to pay in semester 2. The information is there. Yeah, because your admission letter in the portal will have that data.
And how does a learner know how much loan they're going to repay?
From the figures that they are paying, based on the amount of, for example, if the government is paying 90% for me, but I'm supposed to pay 5,800. So my 10% is 5,800. That means that loan is 58,000 minus 5,800 is about 52. So it's, and if you want to know, you can ask. It is there. The information is there. The
it's easily accessible.
Yeah, it's easily accessible in the portals.
Okay, that's proper to note. This point of fee reduction is a step in the right direction because it definitely alleviates the burden on the parents and some of the students who are responsible for their own education. But it raises concerns around underfunding in some of this higher learning institutions, and we well know that public universities have been cash-strapped, and you've hinted on it in terms of the monies they are owed previously. Talk to us about the underfunding part, because if I can draw examples from what we've seen recently in the media, which at times we air the negative and not the positive, and we do this for a right reason, because we have to air. We're the voice of the people at the end of the day. So when you see lecturers withholding marks, and when they're asked, they say it's because they haven't been paid for some time. So it boils down back to the money and how it is being managed in this public higher learning institutions. So talk to us about the cash crunch crisis and how we'll solve it, and the ripple effect of perhaps reducing fee and how it will be felt in these institutions.
So just that there's been a problem in the higher education sector, like I said. And some of the problems are leadership and governance issues. And that's why you've seen quite a number of changes being done in that space to ensure that we have the right teams heading these institutions, either as members of council, chairs of council, or even the management. Previously, the requirement, for example, in employment, is that the ratio of academic to non-academic staff in universities should be 30 to 70.
So 30 non-academic?
No.
Or 30 academic?
30 non-academic, 70 academic.
Okay.
Because universities are...
The core business is academics. Yeah.
Yes, so the support staff is supposed to be 30%. The core academic staff is supposed to be 70%. But when you do analysis of most of the universities, you'd find there are 70 non-academic and 30 academic. That shot up their payrolls, leading to universities not able to meet their obligations in terms of payment of salaries and the emoluments that belong to these institutions. So one of the things that is happening as we speak is the rationalization of staff in various institutions. Take Moi, for example, that has had many challenges and had a meeting this morning with the team because they had issued a strike notice, which they are supposed to have a discussion, and I explained to them. And we agreed that they will go and have a meeting with their staff and see how best to resolve that issue relating to the strike. The Moi has 70% non-academic and 30% academic. So to turn it round, you really require to do something, you need to make very hard decisions, and we're going to do that. So when you find that in some of these institutions, the running has not been up to scratch, so to speak. Because as I said, remember, we had 23 universities that were technically insolvent. They have reduced in number, by the way, I think we have about now either 13 or 14 or thereabouts. The others have come out because of these, changes that we are doing. What then it means is that the others, because we have 43 universities, public universities, operating in the same space, but the others are in very good financial health. So what I'm saying is that where in institutions that management was not being done properly, employment was not being done properly, maybe they were employing some support, what you call temporary staff or part-time, lecturers, and these are the ones that perhaps would say, I have to withhold before I get paid, or I use it to get my money and things like that.
Yeah.
This is a situation where it is university specific, and we are addressing it because we have had a chance to have a discussion with some of the VCs, and I've said marks should not be connected to fees. So if you've agreed that our students have done their exams, get another way of ensuring that you get resources to pay the lecturers. But that problem, as I said, is being addressed by this funding model, which now, with the reduction of the school fees, what it has done is it has increased the payment that the universities are receiving. Previously, you would say, okay, my course is costing maybe 300,000, but then you have only 3 people paying. The other 25 are not paying. It is better you reduce the fees a little bit so that you can have a larger number paying, so that you have a small portion of people not being able to pay. And this is helping, it will help the universities, in our estimation, the next 3 or 4 years to come out of that particular conundrum of debts. But also, as I said, the historical debts, the historical pending bills that exist, it is something as a government we are thinking about on how to do it. We are thinking about maybe coming up with an education bond, for example, to get maybe 100, 200 billion to sort out that problem. We are thinking about what can we securitize, maybe to get somebody give us the resources and recoup in the next 15, 20 years so that we can solve those issues. We have other challenges in the universities. We have infrastructure problems. We have stalled projects, halls at 50% complete, dorms in various hostels in various completion. These are some of the things that we are thinking about. Where do we get the resources to completely? I think we need about 6 or 8 billion to complete all the stalled projects in the universities. So if we were to get resources from somewhere, we take the 8-10 billion, finish all the infrastructure, pay off the lecturers, pay off the pensions, so that the universities can now come to par and clean their books and start doing what they are meant to do, which is research, innovation, so that we can even commercialize some of the innovations that they are supposed to come up with. Okay. So every day we are challenging ourselves, what can we do to resolve that, to allow them to go back, remain in their lecture halls, and remain in their institutions to do the research that they need to do.
Well, education is a right, as they say. And as we finalize, speak to us about the quality aspect, because with so many challenges, one might fail to ascertain the steps being taken to ensure that it's not only accessible, but it's quality education for all. So speak to us about what the ministry is doing to ensure that the quality, despite the challenges, be at the basic or at the higher learning level, is not compromised in any way, shape or form. Yeah.
We are, as a ministry, not compromising on quality. In fact, it's one of our main objectives to ensure that all our learners, all our students in higher learning, in TVETs, the quality is maintained. That's why, for example, from last year, if you recall, around September, this time last year, we had WASU issuing strike notices, we had KUDEA striking, we had NAT striking, we had KUPET striking, and we had long meetings where we had serious discussions with each other. And we agreed that we are going to ensure that we keep our teachers in school. we keep our lecturers in class, we keep our learners in school, we keep all our students in school by resolving those strikes. And we came to an agreement that we need to, for example, ensure that the collective bargaining agreements for NAT, for KUPPET, for WASU need to be negotiated and signed at the beginning of their lifespan. What was happening before is you would find the CBA for 2017-2021 had never been negotiated, had never been done. So they're negotiating it in 2023-2024 at the end of the lifespan when they are supposed to be on the third cycle. Okay. So we agreed we'll all engage as government and as the unions to ensure that we negotiate those particular CBAs in advance so that it is easier to inbuild the cost into the budget projections for the future so that we know what we actually owe. And because of that, we did sign various return to work formulas where, for example, the amounts that were outstanding, we did spread some of them out to, I think, even 2032. There's one I think we did that goes all the way to 2032 because if a university had an issue relating to workers that totaled 12 billion, we cannot afford that in one go. So we agreed, let's spread this out. Year 1, we'll pay maybe 1.5. Year 2, we pay 2.7. Year 3, we pay this until the end. And some of it was a mix and match. Maybe there are properties that you can transfer to the pension fund so that they can be able to meet that particular obligation. And because in terms of pensions, for instance, you don't require all the 8 billion at once. You require maybe 500 million per year depending on who is retiring and how much money is being released. So when we did the math between the Ministry of Education, between Treasury, between the institutions themselves, we came to that agreement, and since then they've agreed everybody is in class doing their work. Okay. Where there is a challenge in, for example, the return to work formula not being adhered to, we've agreed that we'll be holding regular meetings to find out from the 25 things that we said we will do, how many have we done fully? How many have been done partly? How many have not been done, and what is the challenge, so that we resolve it. So by keeping the teachers, by keeping the lecturers in class, we maintain quality. In terms of issues relating to like promotions that normally motivate the teachers to be able to do well, we agree these are going to be inbuilt into the negotiations, and the clusters and then the promotions will be done on a regular basis. That's why you see, for example, like TSC has been advertising on the promotion so that people can feel that we are able to move from one grade to another fairly, so that they are motivated. So some of this, and availing, for example, books. One of the things we've done in the basic education is to ensure that each student in each course subject has their own textbook at the ratio of 1:1. And for example, in grade 9, last year in September, we did print out 9.9 million books in all the subjects so that each student can get theirs, and therefore it helps them to be able to do their homework, to be able to study without having to wait for one book to circulate between so many people. Okay. So there are many programs that we are doing and the retooling aspect that we've talked about, just to ensure that we do not drop the ball on quality. And I can assure you, for example, the grade 9 students who are going to grade 10 next year, we've had meetings with even the teachers, and we've told them these are a completely different set of students. The confidence, the 360, roundabout the way they think, because what we are doing in competency-based education is to train and teach our children to think. Our children learners need to do critical thinking. For example, how are you able to utilize the information that you've gotten to solve a societal problem. So they are not the students that teachers will just be giving information without expecting feedback. There'll be feedback, they will challenge you, they will submit, they'll ask you questions, and because the information now in the world is so available, it requires the teachers to be top-notch as we speak.
Definitely. Yeah. I have to sneak in this question, Bwana CS, because there are a couple of issues that have been canvassed by the political class touching on the education sector, and would like your comments on this. First of all, the politicization of hiring of teachers. ever so often do we hear that, some of these hiring letters are given at political functions. Speak to what the ministry is doing about this. Equally, during the just concluded devolution conference in Homa Bay County, the former Prime Minister gave a couple of proposals touching on devolving education, I think, to the secondary level. And if I can quote him verbatim, he said it doesn't make sense for a Ministry of Education official coming all the way from Nairobi, going to, let's say, Homa Bay County to inspect classrooms, yet they're county officials at the county level. So speak to us about that particular proposal. And of course, National Government Constituency Development Fund. You highlighted about bringing together some of these bursaries. Is this a proposal you support in terms of making sure that particular fund is devolved?
Let me start from the issues politics on what did you say, politics?
Hiring of teachers,
hiring
politicizing,
of teachers.
Yes.
Now, teachers, you are aware, are hired by TSC.
Yes.
Like now we are doing the 24,000 teachers. There's an advert, you apply, you are shortlisted, you'll be interviewed, then you get your letter. Anything outside that is illegal, because then it means you are not, even under the Employment Act, under Chapter 6, you are not really following down the law. So what, from where I sit,
Yes,
I expect that is what is supposed to be followed, including issues relating to, for example, teachers who've been qualified for many years. Some are, when I go to places, they tell me we are retiring before we get employed. So the policy that we've recommended is, if you have teachers who have been in the market for that much longer, maybe 45 years of age, and they qualified in 2013, maybe they should be given the first priority, especially in those subjects that are not the ones that we are doing, pushing for, like the ones that we mentioned, the students who have graduated and are already CBE ready, so that space can be cleaned up, so that people can feel some level of fairness in the way the hiring is being done. So it is not a policy that you can speak to that this is the right thing to do. If somebody does that, that is not the right thing to do, and we will discourage it. That's one. Number two, on the issue of the suggestion that education should be devolved, I would like to start from the other side. Under the Constitution currently, county governments are in charge of ECD.
Yeah.
Before you come to... Now, what then happens is this. Although there are standards of what should happen in those ECDs, there are counties whose priority is not education. So you find they are doing nothing in that ECD. They are not employing the teachers, they are not paying them, and their classrooms are not, the facilities are not there.
Name and shame. Which counties
On the other hand, we have counties that are taking serious that particular portion, and they are doing a good job. I'm only saying that because then you see the discrepancy where maybe one county would take education seriously and the other one doesn't. So you would then have a country where you have two sets of individuals. One went to a county that takes education seriously. So I would not support that proposal that we devolved up to primary level, up to secondary level. Because by the time a student is leaving secondary, they can either go to university or they can go to the job market, right? Or they can go and do the TVET or something like that. Where now the standards are different, you would find that we are having a problem even in that market, the job market. So I think it is not a proposal that personally, and that is not government position, but personally, is not something I would support.
Okay.
On the issue
NGCDF.
of CDF, when we were doing the 23,000 classrooms, we did 16,000 by the Ministry of Education. The rest were done by a partnership between the Ministry of Education and CDF. And I've gone around the country and I've seen the kind of classrooms the CDF teams have done. I've also seen some of the schools that they have come up with the classrooms, the number of classrooms they have done. In my view, they've done a good job. And I think the solution would not be to say, let's us take away CDF from the MPs, because in some instances, they are the only ones who have done a classroom in those areas, far-flung areas, be it in Holland, North Hor, places that perhaps ministry officials have not reached.
But the argument is the counties might be able to do
the same thing. But as I said, look at what they already done with what they have. Once that probably is done, then you can say let us extend.
Okay.
But under the Constitution, again, it is not in the schedule, it's not their mandate. Sure. So for you to be able to make those changes, including the issues relating to CDF, you'd require to change the Constitution. And for you to do that, you'd require to go do public participation, and then, which is what is being done as we speak. I think they are doing the public participation on CDF, if I'm not wrong. And then we'll get to know what the Kenyans want. Because our Constitution gave all the power to the people. So what the people want, the people will get. So
the people shall get.
The people shall get. So really, that is the space where, but it's all these issues just that are suggested. They are good conversations, because we're in a transition, we are doing the reforms. This is a good time to have all those discussions, interrogate. There's nothing wrong with interrogating the systems that we have now. Even what the former Prime Minister suggested, it's something that we can interrogate, maybe find out, is there something that can be done? So for me, I would say it is good to have those conversations, and then we proceed from there.
Okay, Bwana CS, thank you so much for your time. I think that's a good place to finalize this conversation. And to our viewers, we hope there's some semblance of progress in terms of what exactly the Ministry of Education is doing to ensure that quality, accessible education is there for all. Asante sana for your time.
Thank you for having me. And just to tell the public that there isn't really, we're not in such a bad place in the education sector. We've done a lot. We've even done a lot in the TVET sector, which we didn't get time to talk about. Hope we'll get time to talk about it. We are also doing serious reforms in that space, and we are seeing the results in that space. We have moved the number from 297,000 that we started with to the current 700,000. And in that space, by the way, 85% of our graduates, trainees who come out of get jobs. They are either employed or they are employees, or they have their own business. They become employers or employees. 85% of which is a good rate. So we are doing something in this space, and we need the support of each and every Kenyan of goodwill, so that we receive these suggestions, and where we need to navigate, where we have to course correct, we do it, because we are still in that space of reforms until 2029. When this cohort that is going to grade 10 will be graduating to university. And universities are already working on the curriculum to deal with the issues here. Books are already being published, so that in January they will be all in school. So we are doing something in this space. I just want to encourage Kenyans that sometimes when maybe one case happens and somebody thinks that everything has fallen, it's not true. We are actually doing a lot in this space, and the government is every day working towards ensuring that our learners get the very best in the institutions that they are in. So thank you very much for having me. Hope to get another chance.
Definitely. We'll get to talk about TVETs and the other areas we are not able to converse today. So it's not all doom and gloom in the education sector. Let's not throw the baby with the bathwater, as they say. There are a couple of things that are being done by the government to ensure you get that quality education. My name is Jesse Rogers. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.